Moment to make sure that everything's nice and live. Looks like it is. Seems good. Okay. So we should be live. We should all have the correct titles and things across all the different platforms. Welcome everybody to Hitting the Mats with Goth and Good. I actually should have done this a little bit differently. I'm just not used to doing it live on stream. So you ready to redo this the right way, Goth?
Of course, because we end up doing it 5 times anyway.
Yeah, I know. I mean, basically, you guys are just seeing behind the scenes right now. That's all. I'm Goth.
Wait, you're Goth?
I need more coffee. I'm good. Oh my god. This is what y'all did to me. This is what y'all do to me. I'm good.
I'm Goth.
And this is Hitting the Mats with Goth and Good. Today, folks, we're gonna be talking a little bit about spots in professional wrestling. What's in the coffee? Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about spots in professional wrestling, and in order to do that, you kind of have to define what a spot is. And that's something that's rather difficult. And when we did this last time and the recording got messed up, I put Goth on the spot, so I'm gonna do that again. Goth, why don't you tell us what a spot is?
Well, a spot can either be a particular move, a particular sequence in a match, just a particular moment in the match that furthers the story being told in the match. And that's as far as I'm going to go before I make myself look like an idiot. So go from there, Good.
Yeah, okay, so basically that covers it. Spots are very difficult to define in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they can be such a diverse thing. Like, the reality is that Shawn Michaels' corner sweet chin is a spot, but so is Joey Ryan's grab my crotch so I can flip you. There's just such a wide variety of things that a spot encompasses. And in reality, a spot is something, like if I was going to define a spot, I would say that a spot is something that is more than a move and less than John Cena's finisher sequence. Because that was just painful. Anyways, 10 years of that finisher sequence was painful.
Yep.
That being said, so we're going to talk about some of our favorite spots in professional wrestling today. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the spots that really, really bug us. And by us, I mean me, because there are a couple spots that just drive me crazy. That being said, why don't we open up on a positive note? Goth, what are your favorite spots in professional wrestling?
So one of my favorite spots, a lot of people who know me know my favorite wrestler of all time is Shawn Michaels. And one of the spots he's infamous for, so if just a moment in a particular match, probably a lot of people have seen this, Shawn Michaels versus Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin springboards off the top rope, and Shawn Michaels damn near kills her with sweet chin music out of midair. Absolutely love that spot, because it's the combination of obviously Shawn Michaels getting the sweet chin music down to precise timing, but also Shelton Benjamin just selling the hell out of it, because it did. It looked like it killed him.
See, this is actually interesting, and it's interesting to me because I don't know, like, if I would. Okay, so we were just talking about the sort of amorphous nature of what a spot really is. And when I hear you talk about this, I don't think that the sweet chin music to Shelton out of the air was a spot. I think that was a moment in a match. And I think if you were to define it as a spot, though, because... And here's my logic for it.
It's a high spot. It's a high spot.
Okay, but here's my logic for why that's the spot isn't actually specifically Shawn Michaels kicking Shelton Benjamin, right? Because we've also seen Randy Orton hit that spot now, right? Where they come off the ropes and boom, RKO.
Oh, yeah, like it's all over the place now, doing, catching people with moves in midair, out of springboards and stuff like that. I get that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is that the spot there is more of the springboard counter spot, right? Like, it's just, that's a great momentum stopping spot. But I do think that was a great instance of it for sure. I'm trying to think of, that does remind me though, another great spot that I remember that we don't see all that often anymore, to be 100% honest. Do you remember when, I think it was, I want to say it was Angle, but I can't say it was him for sure, the run-up exploderplex off the top that Shelton would do, where like somebody would get up on the top and he would out of nowhere just climb the ropes real fast and then explode them off the top?
Yeah, no, because again, the Shawn Michaels match, he did it with Shawn Michaels Wrestlemania 21. He did the run up and he did like avalanche angle slam which again looked like it killed.
Yeah,
like,
and it's
I
it's
do
a
love
really
the
cool
run up the
spot.
turnbuckle spots. Like whether that's a guy running up the turnbuckle to grab somebody, or a guy actually just running up the turnbuckle to say perform a high flying finisher, because that takes a lot of skill and accuracy, and it just always, if it isn't botched, it always just ends up looking amazing. So
yeah, Tackett just made a very, very interesting point. What about Kurt Angle's moonsault? Would that be a spot? And I would say that Kurt Angle's moonsault was absolutely a spot. And the reason I would say that it was a spot is because when Kurt Angle went for that moonsault, like, I don't think he ever, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Goth, but did you ever see him actually hit anyone with the moonsault? Like, anyone?
Yes. And it's I think it was a match against Name Redacted.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I would say that his moonsault had like a 90% miss rate, right?
Oh yeah. No, I get the meaning, but it's just like, yeah, I think he hit it in a match against Name Redacted.
And I think the reason why that spot would be a spot is because the whole idea, and I wouldn't say that it was specifically Kurt Angle's moonsault that was a spot, but I would say it was that never hits high spot is a spot that people use for pacing in matches. Because speaking of Name Redacted, folks, if you can't put together who Name Redacted is, we'll go into that further because there's a spot that I want to talk about in particular that had Name Redacted in it. But basically, yeah, Name Redacted was confused by that for like half a second. Yeah, so Name Redacted also had a high spot that he would go for. It was a diving headbutt that he would, miss just as much as he hit, if not more. And I think that is the missed high spot is absolutely a spot that people use in matches to control pacing. And that's a really, really good one because it's also like an overconfidence spot, right? It's like, okay, it's either a hope spot because they're like, this is it, I got to give everything to put him away. Or it's an overconfidence spot where they're like, I'm so great, I'm going to hit this moonsault that never actually hits. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Ric Flair thrown off the top rope.
Oh yeah, like so he'd always that was one of Ric Flair's spots where he'd go for a top rope move, but he'd always get somebody would always deadly driver him off the top rope. Like he'd very rarely hit a top rope move.
Oh, that's a
that was one
point.
of Ric Flair's spots, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about spots and you're going to talk about Ric Flair, there's that one infamous spot that nobody can. The Flair flop is like one of the greatest comedy spots, and not just comedy. It's like a great comedy and exhaustion spot.
Yeah,
one of the greatest in history. I mean, you can't even debate the value of that spot. And Ric Flair was the best at it too, with that whole like. I loved it when he would do the punch drunk thing first, where he'd be like. Like, he's going to hit you a couple times, and then he just...
Yeah. If we're talking about spots like that, I do have to, just because, I do have to mention the Shawn Michaels rolling up the turnbuckle when he's sent into it, and, like, rolling back down it. Like, one of his spots he used a lot of the time.
Wasn't that originally a Harley Race spot?
No, Harley Race's spot version of that was it's the one Triple H actually would end up using quite a bit, is where he would roll up the top and go over the rope to land on the apron. Shawn just went up to the top and rolled back down.
Okay, I see the difference. Yeah, I love both of those spots anyway because they're ring general spots. And like we talked about this before, ring general spots, guys, are my favorite spots in professional wrestling. We're talking like, since we're talking ring general spots, I tend to like the dirty ones. We'll go into how there are some clean ones too. But like one of my favorite ring general dirty spots that you'll ever see, and you won't see it anymore, and I don't know why because it's safe and it's awesome, is the one where like the heel gets whipped into the corner, maybe he gets clotheslined, he falls into a seated position in the corner, and the face comes over to capitalize on it, and the heel lunges forward, he grabs the front of the trunks with his hand, and then falls backwards and throws the face in between the turnbuckles into the ring post. And that spot is just it's a great ring general spot. It makes a heel look not only like they know how to play dirty, but also like they're exactly aware of where they are in the ring, and they have the opportunity ready in their mind. It's like almost a veteran spot right there. I think it's it's probably my favorite spot of all time, and it also has variations. You've seen guys do it where they do it towards the ropes and the guy goes outside from it, which is another great way to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that the one spot, and if people obviously catch this, if they ever watch a Kurt Hawkins match, where he would whip somebody into the rope, he would follow them, but then he would slide under the bottom rope with his arm out, and then using his arm, he would trip the opponent as they came off the rope. Always looked so good, so slick when he did it.
I don't know that I've actually seen that spot, but it does sound like a really slick spot. And I mean, that too is like a ring general spot, right? It's about understanding your positioning in the ring. And I really feel like that's something that we don't see enough of anymore. And I pop super hard whenever I see him. And we talked about this last time, but the Miz's spot in the corner where he'll run at them and leap through the second rope with that lariat. Like, I love that, too, because it's just a ring awareness spot. And then there's the Johnny Nitro spot he does where he'll, like, elbow them in the corner, seat them on the second rope, and then slide under the ropes to hit that German, like a snap German. Yeah. Such a cool spot, man. Like, I love spots that use the ring because it's a separation from wrestling and pro wrestling, right? Because, like... Yeah. That's something that is distinctly a pro wrestling thing, is that you're in a ring. So being able to use the ring like that is just brilliant. I mean, I like removing the turnbuckle spots. I like the drop toe hold into the turnbuckle spot. The apron spot too. The one where they baseball slide and the guy grabs the apron and pulls it up and catches them in the apron. Such a good heel spot, man. Yeah, like it's definitely just a brilliant way to construct a match.
No, it is. And talking of like constructing a match, it's one of those things. I don't know if you call it a spot or just more of a piece of the story in a match. But I always pop super if it's done well. I will point out if it's done well, the thing I always pop super hard for is a 2.999999 kick out, because if it's done built to really well, it is always super effective. Like my favorite of all time, as an example for this, probably virtually every wrestling fan has probably seen this match. WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Obviously, Shawn does the skin the cat, but Undertaker catches him, delivers a tombstone. Obviously, everybody thinks it's over because it's the tombstone. Shawn kicks out at 2.9 and Undertaker's cell with his face. I will remember that for the rest of my life. I popped super hard when that happened.
So it's interesting that you say the 2.99 spot, because like one of the other ones that we discussed was the back and forth pinfall spot with technicians where like, oh, this guy's got a roll up 2.9. Oh, this guy's got another roll up 2.9. And they just keep swapping position back and forth. And like your point of view was that you don't really pop for that one because it almost never finishes a match or whatnot.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't, I feel it's a bit like, I hate to use the term, but I feel like when you get into that sequence, it's a bit gimmicky because of the fact you pretty much, especially if you're a fan that's like at least a little bit smart to the business, you kind of know that that's a spot that it's like, it's counter after counter, and it can build tension, but you almost know it's never going to finish a match either.
Well, I mean, okay, so It depends on the company and it depends on the booking, right? So I think that spot's great, particularly if you have two technicians doing it. Like if you had Benoit, name
redacted.
If you had name redacted and Angle doing it, I would buy into that, right? But it's the same for the 2.9 spot, right? Like if you see a 2.9 count spot in a John Cena match, you're not invested. You're not invested. You know what that spot is. John Cena just got hit by a dump truck, 2.9. John Cena just got hit by an airline jet, 2.9.
Yeah. No, that was why I said with the 2.9s, it has to be built to and done effectively. And there's only, I feel like, a few people in this business that have the finesse to pull that off really well.
I definitely think that it's it depends on the match story, right? It's when the match story is really, really close and there's already suspense building because of that's like the icing on the cake, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of the Taker and Shawn match at WrestleMania, though, like I didn't buy into the Shawn pinning Taker there. Like I just wasn't buying into Shawn breaking the streak. Didn't see that happening.
I mean, okay, so I have to tell a little story for this one, actually, because this is legitimately one of my favorite matches of all time. So I watched this live. I watched that match live with my dad, and my dad got me into pro wrestling. But it's very hard to make him mark out for anything. This is the only match I've ever seen him mark out to. Like, honestly, this is why it's like kind of a sentimental match for me. And I understand it because I wasn't really smart back then because I would have been like 13, maybe 12. I don't know. But even at young age, but then obviously sitting next to my dad who's in his 30s, who was a little bit smart to the business. He was even convinced at certain points, it's like, holy shit, is Shawn actually going to do it? Like, obviously, I understand, like, if it's somebody that's watching it, that's like, that does have the smarkiness towards it. It's like, yeah, it's the streak. Shawn's not going to break it. But if you can, I don't know. It's like, if it's the match is sold so well that you buy into it's one party winning more than the other, or at the very least, you can't tell who's going to win it. I just think that's a great match all around because, and my dad was marking out for, virtually all of the spots in that match, and so was I. So that's why it's like that particular match is really sentimental to me. And like I remember virtually every bloody spot that's in that match as well.
See, well, and this is one of the differences between you and I. I respect Shawn's work, but I don't. Frankly, I'm not a fan of Shawn's. And that might be part of why I didn't buy into it. But I just didn't buy, like, to me, from a booking perspective, that's a huge waste, right? You're giving a guy that's already been over for decades the biggest over you could possibly give him. For what purpose? Especially when Shawn already had his resurgence in the 2000s when he came back and feuded with Triple H off of that whole "don't hunt what you can't kill" gimmick.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing with you. I just think it's always going to be down to the person's taste. And like I said, I wasn't like I am now. I wasn't really that smart then. Maybe I would have seen it more like that if I was a little bit older, but I was only like 12 or 13.
So now you're just calling me old.
No, I'm not calling Alpha. Freak's sakes.
I'm just giving you crap, man. Yeah. No, you're right. It does depend on the smarkiness of the person, right? Because I wasn't thinking that there was no state. Like, I wasn't buying into it because I didn't buy into them giving Shawn that win. It wasn't about whether or not Shawn could beat Taker for me. It was, there's absolutely no way as a booker you do this. Of course, they gave it to Brock Lesnar, so hell do I know, apparently. I don't know, man. WWE, just go figure. One of the great spots, I will give Shawn Michaels this. He is a great performer. I'm not a huge fan of his, but he is a phenomenal performer. And the spot with him and Ric Flair in Ric Flair's retirement match from WWE.
Oh, I think
that was the best sympathy spot that I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, okay, I literally
that was
like
the spot I thought you were thinking of, but never mind. But yeah, I get that as well.
I'm going to admit something to you all at home. You can laugh at me if you want to, but I literally teared up and cried when Shawn Michaels, with tears on his face, basically looked at Ric Flair, and it was like, this is the moment that I put Old Yeller down. And like, kicked him in the face. And it was just, Shawn, to his credit, really sold that so well. And I do think it's because Shawn and Rick have a really good respect for each other, and I do think that Shawn understood the intensity of that moment and why it mattered so much. But like that legitimately caused me to tear up. I was just taken aback by that. It was probably one of the most emotionally invested matches I've ever had. And the best part about it is that I'm not a huge fan of either man, but it's not about that at that point. It's about a legend retiring a legend, even though they don't want to, but they have to. Like it was such a cool moment for that reason, because it really felt like Shawn didn't want to do what he had to do, but he had to do it.
Yeah, and I mean it's not really part of the sympathy point, but like where Shawn, like it really shows at one point in the match where it really shows Shawn in a sense, isn't going to hold back was really like it. I don't know how to describe, but a really sick looking spot. Obviously, where Shawn's put Ric Flair on the announce table. Shawn does the springboard, the Sai moonsault onto the announce table, and obviously Ric Flair's move. And oh my god, Shawn's like abdomen area must have been killing him because he hit the edge, literally the edge of the table. Like, and it just showed the ferocity in that match, as it were. Even though by the end of it, Shawn actually didn't want to pull the trigger, but leading up until that point, like, Shawn was going hell for leather, basically.
Yeah, I see that spot didn't stick out to me personally. But like I said, like I typically I'm not super vested in either man, so the sympathy spot stood out to me because even if you weren't invested in either man, like there was no way to not be invested in that. It was a legend ending a legend, and not only a legend, but a legend that he'd looked up to, because Flair's been around for so long, long. Like it was basically like kicking your dad in the face. Yeah. Like, you don't want to do it, but it's time to get that job done. So it was.
You admitted something here, good.
Well, I mean, in this case, it was time for Flair to go. Like, I remember Flair during this part of his career, it was just like when you'd watch him in the ring, it was like, it's not a good idea for him to keep doing this. Like, it's time. It's time to hang it up. Kind of like I wish that Taker had hung it up a little while ago, before they needlessly gave Brock Lesnar the streak for some godforsaken reason. I will never in my life think that was a good idea. Never. No. Like, I know why they did it, but it's still a bad idea.
Yeah, no, it was. And then on top of that, like, concussing him 5 minutes into the match.
Dude, I would have... You know who... Okay, that's a different conversation. I'm getting off track here. So back on the track of really, really great spots. Eddie Guerrero was a spot factory.
Oh, yeah.
That man was a spot factory. The hit the chair on the mat, toss it to the other guy. Oh, I'm dead. Ref, he decked me. It was his fault. So many. Dude, the tag rope spot. Do you remember the tag rope spot he did where he untied the tag rope from the corner and tied it to the rope so that he could walk closer to the middle of the ring?
Yeah, I do.
So good. Like, Eddie had so many great cheating spots, and you and I discussed this before. Like, the reason it got so over was because it wasn't a bad guy thing for Eddie.
Nope.
Like, Eddie would do it and you'd be like, he's a smart dude.
It's not only that as well. It's like kind of that scenario. It's like, when he had that smile, it's like, you can't hate that guy. You just can't. When he used to come out in the lowrider and he just smiled at the crowd, and it's just like, you can't hate him. Even though he's doing all of this, what a heel does, you just can't hate him.
Well, and not only that, like the other thing, and we talked about this when we did this recording before, another big thing that's important for spots is the camera work, right? So, like, this is something that goes extremely underrated, but the camera work is integral in creating both moments and spots in professional wrestling. And just being in the right position versus being in the wrong position can make a massive, massive difference. And with Eddie, one of the best things about the camera work with him is they always had the ringside camera ready for him. So he would do like his cheesy thing, and then he'd drop to the mat and he'd turn his head sideways and they'd cut to the ringside camera and he'd be looking straight at them and he'd just crack that big old grin. And you're like, oh, you cheeky bastard. So good.
I mean, obviously, if you're talking about camera work, I did bring this up in the record, but yeah, if you're talking about camera work, the best piece of camera work, that basically created a legend, is the infamous WrestleMania 13 Stone Cold versus Bret Hart submission match, where Bret Hart's got Stone Cold in submission. Stone Cold is bleeding profusely, and he puts his head up. The camera is in the perfect spot. You can see he's screaming in agony, the blood dripping all down his face. And to the point of, obviously, he doesn't give up, and he just passes out. I just had to mention that because that is like the most perfect piece of camera work I think I've ever seen.
No, dude, I totally agree. That absolutely, and like, to me, more importantly, that is when Stone Cold like went full over. He was, he got big after the King of the Ring when he did the Austin 316 promo on Jake Roberts. But he was still not like solidified at the top, I think, until that feud with Bret. And you're right, that moment. And if I recall correctly, the funny thing about that spot is that it shouldn't even have happened, because if I recall correctly, they weren't supposed to bleed that match. And Bret,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure Bret was like, we're bleeding. Vince isn't going to complain about it. Let's do it.
It's not only that, it's just the way it happened as well, because like it would obviously hurt like hell, but it's just funny how it does happen, because obviously I think Bret's like on the apron, like Austin's trying to choke him out, like using the rope or something, like so Austin's hanging over the top rope and he's trying to choke Bret, and Bret with both hands just lifts up the ring bell, dong, right on Stone Cold's head, and that's how he gets busted.
It was such a good match, man. And like speaking of Bret had the figure, was it was the figure 4 on the ring post, right?
The ring post, yeah, it was.
See, that's another one of those great ring general spots where you're like using it. There's so many of them. Like I like the figure 4 choke in the corner off the ropes too. The tarantula, all these ring rope spots are stuff that I just pop for huge, because it's smart. Like, why wouldn't you use the ring rope? Dude, it's like, okay, so another great heel spot is when they roll the guy out of the ring and then they choke him with the microphone cables at ringside. And I know they don't do that anymore because there's all this controversy around choking people, thanks to Name Redacted. But that being said, those spots are so smart, because why wouldn't you do that? Like, the best spots in wrestling are not spots that require you to use a massive imagination. They're spots that make sense. Why would you not do that? It's there. Why not use it? Like, okay, so another one that gets me with that too is like every time they pull the little monitors off of the tables and throw them on the ground, I'm like, why didn't you just hit them with it? Why didn't you just hit him with it? And when they do hit him with it, I'm like, yeah, there you go. That's thinking. That's using your noggin.
I'm sorry, I can't use this because Vince will yell at me because it costs $10,000.
But I can chuck it on the floor like trash because that's better. Dude, I'm just like, come on, man. But speaking of really cool... go ahead.
Wait, hold on. Just with technical equipment. Best spots ever with The Rock with the cameras. I don't know what it was with him and using the cameras and talking trash, but it always worked.
Oh, yeah.
He always grabbed one of the camera guys' cameras, and also you'd be hearing him just talking trash, and he always... I don't know. He if he wasn't a wrestler, he would have been a camera guy, because he always got the perfect shots no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, Rock is a once-in-a-generation talent, just like Austin was.
Sorry.
So no. It's good. Go ahead.
I just got the one. Do you remember the promo he was doing? I think it was before the Royal Rumble 2002, where he's got the camera and he's like going, it's like this guy thinks he's going to win the Royal Rumble.
Nah, I don't offhand remember that one.
Oh god, you've got to watch that. So it's just hilarious. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So moving forward, let's and we talked about this a lot when we did this episode before when it got messed up, but there are so many like weapon spots that are just really, really cool, right? Yeah. And like one of my favorite is from when Taker was doing his, I'm the American badass, you will respect me kind of thing. It was that chair guillotine spot. It was so good. It's so good because, like, when you watch it, it's just visceral. Like, he literally, it's like, let me put this chair on your throat and then slam the chair into the ground. And, like, kudos to Matt Hardy because he was one of the first ones that sold it. And Matt did such a great job. Like, he takes it, he hits the ground, he immediately grabs his throat and starts making gagging noises like he can't breathe. And, like... Dude, it just made Taker look like he would kill you. Like, he would come out there and kill you just to make a point. And then he did it to Jeff. And then he just started doing it to everyone. And I was like, dude, he is for real right now. And it's super cool because it's also a super safe spot. Like, you're not going to CTE somebody with that spot, but it's going to look awesome.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the guillotine one, but the one I prefer is the Pillmanizing the next spot. Because it just looks so disgusting. Like, I remember the one time I was like almost turning away from watching what was going on. I think it was Triple H did it to Shawn Michaels. Yeah, again. Triple H did it to Shawn Michaels, and he Pillmanized him around the neck, and obviously hits it, and like Shawn is almost just like spewing up blood. It was just like, oh god, I don't know if I can watch this. Like, it just did. It looked so disgusting. Obviously, it's not as instant, I know, as the guillotine one. It requires a bit more build up and it creates a bit more tension. But maybe that's the reason why I prefer the Pillmanizing version of the neck, like using the chair with the neck. Put it that way.
Yeah, see, that's what I was gonna say. Was I actually don't prefer the Pillmanizing version myself, but the reason that I don't prefer it is because of the general setup. Like, the top of the chair is on their chest. So when you stomp it, all you're really doing is smashing the chair into their pecs. And like, from the physics perspective, I don't buy into it. But you're absolutely right about the suspense. And that's what all these spots are really about anyway, is creating suspense, creating intrigue. And the time that it takes to set it up, that build up, that is he really gonna do it moment. And I think one of my favorite, and I swear this has happened, but I can't remember when it was, one of my favorites, I think Triple H set the chair up to Pillmanize the neck and then hit the legs with the sledgehammer.
Oh.
I can't remember when he did it, but I'm almost 100% sure he did. And it was like, you know, that suspense, turn that up to 20 now, because now we're not going to just stomp this. We're going to hit it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And it was so brutal and so great.
And another spot that's going to go down in infamy with chairs is obviously the Concerto.
Oh, yeah. The Concerto is such... Dude, the Concerto is one of the best spots ever created, in my opinion. Because it's relatively safe if you know what you're doing. And you'll... I'll let you expand on that with how well Edge does it, because Edge has mastered it to a degree that is unbelievable.
Yeah, so... Edge is the master of it, and if you watch closely when anytime he's hit a Concerto on somebody, watch very closely, because you'll see he doesn't hit the head. He masterfully only hits the tip of the chair he's using with the tip of the chair that's on underneath the person's head. Because he doesn't need to hit them, he just needs to create that sound, like it just killed them.
That sickening clang.
Yeah. And speaking of Edge and, you know, weapon spots, everybody as well will probably remember this spot, because it's probably the only time it's ever going to get done, because could have been career suicide. Edge spearing Jeff Hardy 20 foot out of midair at WrestleMania 17.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable spot, and you're right. I don't think that spot's actually been replicated.
No,
or even duplicated, rather, might be the better term.
Yeah, because like I think every wrestler is like, yeah, I actually prefer living.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? The ride the barricade spot that Jeff Hardy does, where he'll run the barricade and leap across it to hit like a senton. That's always such a cool spot.
Yeah.
And it's probably just me marking out again because it's a ring general type spot. You're taking advantage of your environment. You're getting value out of it, which is, you know, awesome. I mean, I even love drop toe holds on the chair for the same reason.
Shouts out to Raven.
Yes, my boy. So what's also intriguing here, and like, it's one of those gray areas where, like, I've talked to you about this one before, and we're going to kind of go back to Eddie a little bit here, but my favorite frog splash spot, my favorite variant of it because of the way it's done, is Rob Van Dam's frog splash spot, because Eddie borrowed his from Art Bar, you know, his longtime tag team partner, and it was clean and it was beautiful and it was great. But RVD hitting that frog splash and then flipping off of them, rolling across the mat and grabbing his ribs, like that is a spot to me right there. And the reason why is because, like, you're not going, oh man, he just dived on top of that dude and he's going to cover him. You're going, that's the definition of high risk. He just dang near killed himself to kill the other guy. Like, that's how you do high risk. I mean, not to mention that the dude literally basically flew, so...
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, just in case anybody doesn't know, the reason, obviously, we say it's the 5-star frog splash is a different variant from the regular one, because obviously, if you watch the two side by side, Eddie just does the regular Art Bar frog splash, you know, where it goes, it tucks in, then tucks out again. Whereas RVD, when he tucks in, he splits his legs and puts his hands between his legs and then opens back up.
Yeah. You know what's great about that? You know why he does that? Because doing that creates the right body mechanics for you to twist in midair. That's how he does the midair twist.
Yeah.
Which is super cool in and of itself, because it legit made him look like the dude was flying, like he had tons of control in the air. But yeah, so that's another one of those things that's like almost a move, but could be considered a spot. Like the way he sold that was huge. And I mean, there's other great signs of that too. Like, I would say that Scott Hall's, the way that he sold the stunner, not the first time, the second time, but the way he sold the stunner the second time, where he popped off his feet and landed on his back, I was like, dude, that was like a spot right there. That was solid. Like, everybody should sell like that. Not The Rock, though. The Rock's sell for that was so over the top.
I was about to say, The Rock's version of selling the stunner.
Oh, but speaking of The Rock and Austin, that was a really, really great spot, was them at WrestleMania the last time they met, and you know the number, I don't, so feel free to fill in.
WrestleMania 19.
Yeah, it was and this is something that you can comment on more than me, because you watched a lot of Kings Road Wrestling. But part of what was great about Kings Road Wrestling was part of the psychology was learned finishers, where guys that had faced each other a bunch of times over time would get better at countering each other's finishers because they'd been in the ring together so many times. And WrestleMania 19. Okay. WrestleMania 19 was exactly that, because you had that sequence where, like, Austin went for the stunner, and The Rock spun him around and went for the stunner, and Austin countered the stunner with the rock bottom, and The Rock countered the rock bottom with an actual stunner, and that was the end of the sequence. And it was just super cool as a fan, because, like, every time one of those got countered, you were like, this is it! This is it! Oh, it was so good.
And to add a little bit onto that, Caesar, you brought Kings Road up, especially because Kings Road, especially like you're talking the 90s into the early 2000s, obviously they had like a lot of like long-standing like year-long or you know, few years long feuds. Infamous one, obviously, Kenta Kobashi versus Mitsuharu Misawa, where obviously it's kind of that same thing. But what I do love about their feud was that it had to keep going up. Like, so say Kenta Kobashi would hit, I don't know, say like his lariat on Mitsuharu Misawa. Now, in most cases, if he went against somebody normal, that would just end them. Because of their long-standing feud, they basically got used to, if you will, they got used to each other's moves. So they ended up having to do more to each other to actually...
You have to wonder, and like that's a good point. And The Rock and Austin did the same thing, right? Like they slowly took more and more. And I'm saying that because you have to wonder if Austin and The Rock were like actually looking at this and mirroring that, because nobody's going to tell me that The Rock and Austin weren't smart dudes. Like they had to have been.
Oh, and especially I'd say, at least in the case of Austin, given like his time prior to when he came into WWF/WWE. You know, to the point of obviously just go back to quickly to Kenta Kobashi and like Mitsuharu Misawa, like their last match against each other, I believe, was in 2003, and there was only one way a lot of people knew it could end, and it was where obviously Kenta Kobashi has to deliver the burning hammer to Mitsuharu Misawa to end the match, because everything else he did wouldn't end Mitsuharu Misawa.
Yeah, Asher is saying that at the time they explained it as because the two had trained together, they had tested their finishers out on one another in training and had built up an immunity that way. But it's still just a great psychology thing to have this idea of learned finishers. Yeah, and it's crazy because if you think back to it, like that was. So the Mitsa, I can't pronounce their names, but
Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi. Yeah, their last match was in 2003, I believe.
Yeah, so Misawa and Kobashi's feud being sort of one of the great examples of it. And then, once again, Rock and Austin, another great example of it. It's crazy because the fact that we don't see long-term booking like that anymore actually kind of removes that element of psychology. And it's another thing that we sadly lose by this almost like short-term schizophrenic booking that WWE does now. It's kind of sad, to be honest, because that kind of thing is super great. I mean, to some degree, I think we even saw that a little bit with Dreamer and Raven, where like They started to get more used to taking each other's stuff, and it was just like, okay, we're gonna go harder now.
Yeah.
It's. Oh, go ahead.
So, yeah, because obviously, yeah, it's when you get those like those. Let's say at least like year-long feuds where they do build immunity to each other's finishers or signatures, whatever, and because anytime you look at it, it's like it always feeds back into King's Road style, because that was always like kind of how a match was built, and that's why my particular favorite style of pro wrestling is King's Road, because you just can't beat it in terms of its psychology. You just can't.
So, I am honestly fairly new to all the different types of wrestling styles. I actually learned a lot about this as I got used to Fire Pro and got more interested in it and started doing research.
Yeah.
But I'm not huge on King's Road because I know the matches go for a really long time, and I understand that it's more of a true to sport portrayal. Like, it feels much, much more sport oriented, and I totally respect people that like that, because that's great. But I'm more a fan of the NJPW strong style, where it's like we have some of the psychology.
You mean when they've nicked a bunch of King's Road stuff to make it better?
Well, they've nicked a bunch of King's Road stuff, but they also combined it with like shorter, more story-driven things. So you get more like I'm more interested in the story being told in the ring than the sports aspect of it. So the New Japan Strong style still has that sports element, but it's not the primary element. It's a piece of the puzzle. And that's just personal preference for me. But that being said, I think both of the styles are great. Honestly, like I'm not shooting down on King's Road or anything. I think that King's Road is honestly the foundation for most well-working psychology today. Even though a lot of that sadly gets ignored.
Yeah.
So we've talked about positive spots for a little while now. So are you guys ready? Because I'm ready. It's that moment in time. We're going to talk about the things that drive Good crazy about modern psychology.
Good's going to start shooting.
I am. I'm rubbing my hands together. That means the good stuff's about to happen. So the one spot that I see so commonly nowadays, and it drives me nuts every single time I see it. Like, it just drives me through a loop. The spots where a guy takes the Canadian Destroyer, lands on their feet, rolling through it, and then bounces off the rope and hits like a drop kick.
Yeah.
Or something like that. This is a front flipping pile driver. You are being flipped forward and dropped on your head. Please explain to me how you're not too disoriented to roll through it, bounce off the ropes, and hit a damn drop kick.
No, like, I totally agree with that. No, it's too much, man. It's too much. And I see it more and more amongst juniors, and like I get the ideas that maybe they're agile and maybe the intention is to sell that they like use their hands to catch themselves and springboard out of it or something. But like I saw it in the Best of the Super Juniors in New Japan. And I want to say it was Dragon Lee versus someone else. I think it was Dragon Lee and Will Ospreay. Yeah. And let me just say, I like Will Ospreay. I think Will Ospreay is one of the best competitors on the planet today. Like, no joke. But I saw a spot where they did that, and I was just like, dude, really? Like, why even do the Canadian Destroyer at all? Like, why do it at all if they're just not going to sell anything about it, and they're just going to bounce back up, hit the ropes, and do a drop kick? And then go ahead. And I mean, when it comes to the Canadian Destroyer itself, like I stick to my guns when I say the only person who realistically it was an actual finisher was Petey Williams, because it was his move.
Yeah, Acer's saying Petey Williams has got to be pissed. I would be pissed if I was Petey Williams, dude.
Yeah, because it became the most indie-rific move of all time.
Dude, and Adam Cole does the same thing in WWE. He does that, I jump off the second rope and Canadian Destroyer you, and then they just get right back up and he super kicks them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is the Canadian Destroyer even part of this sequence if it has zero impact? Like, it has less impact than a fucking arm drag at this point. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It just blows my mind, man. It blows my mind.
I wonder if it's less Petey Williams is pissed. I wonder if it's more Petey Williams wish he never invented that move.
I think it's a phenomenal move. I just think that the entire industry has decided to sell it as garbage, and it sucks.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. Like, the only time I could actually consider it a finisher is actually when Pete Williams hit it. That's it.
I mean, there's something to be said for that. Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing for only one person to be able to finish with a particular move. It's just when the industry makes it look like crap. And actually, Asher, you make a great point there. The Canadian Destroyer is the early 2000s DDT. The DDT became so watered down because people use it and get right back up from it. And even Austin has been quoted as saying, "What the hell? What the hell? You're dropping a guy directly on his head. He should be down for a minute. He shouldn't just pop right back up."
Yeah, because obviously it is the whole thing of, like, that was Jake Snake Roberts' finisher. Like, he hit you with that, you won't get back up. End of.
Exactly. What's up, Radlow Bro over on Mixer? How you doing, man? We're just talking about wrestling spots, and right now we're on the subject of things that drive me crazy, which is dudes taking the Canadian Destroyer like it literally isn't anything.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just the Canadian Destroyer. I can't remember what it was, but I watched Owens, and this actually hurt, man. This actually hurt, because I love Owens. I think Owens is one of the... I think he's a treasure of the industry. I really do. Yeah. And I can't remember what move he took, but it was like a stiff kick to the head or something, right? And he did this thing where he, like, staggers step, staggers back into the ropes, hit the ropes, like, bounces off the ropes, and does, like, a spinning lariat. And I'm like, dude, if you're so groggy that you're staggering backwards, how did you just suddenly, I'm going to bounce the ropes and do a spinning lariat? Like, it's just sell, guys. Come on, just sell stuff.
And I mean, there was a point I did bring up when we did the recording, and it may not, it depends on who called the spot, because it may not be Owen's fault. It could be the guy actually delivering the move, like saying, it's like, oh yeah, let's do this cool sequence where I hit you with a move, and then you bounce off the ropes and, like, you know, do your, you know, rolling elbow, whatever. It's like, because it may not be Owen's fault. It's just like he's running with it, sort of thing.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, it's a tough thing all around. Like, I get that, but it kills me, man, to see, like, it just kills logic. It kills logic, and you need logic for people to be able to buy into your match.
And talking of Kevin Owens, going back a few years when he was Kevin Steen, like, that is the only time, well, one of the rare times I've seen a guy's finisher be part of his gimmick. You know, because Kevin Steen literally had a t-shirt that said, "Package pile drive everybody," because that's what he did. Because it killed people. Like, well, I mean, and obviously, little FYI, obviously, because Good actually didn't notice at the time, so, but if anybody isn't sure, Kevin Steen actually did invent the package pile driver.
Yes, I did not know that. But at the same time, I don't think that's necessarily true about people's moves being part of their gimmick. I mean, Randy Orton had shirts that said "out of nowhere."
Yeah.
Like, I'm reasonably sure Austin had shirts about stunning people. Like, I think that a lot of good finishes get that kind of build. But I do think that the way that Steen was pushed in ROH was a really, really interesting, strong push, and I think it did highlight the move in a way that was really nice. Heel Randy Orton is way better than when he was face. I agree primarily because face Randy Orton doesn't have a motivation, and heel Randy Orton is a psychopath, which means he doesn't need one.
Yeah. Totally.
That being said, though, like, the other spot that I hate in modern wrestling, and it's not necessarily a spot as much as it is, it's also a tough one too, because we've talked about, like, you and I talked about how this is a safety situation, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's the dudes waiting for somebody to come over the ropes for a high spot. I hate that when there's three dudes standing outside of the ring and they're all just standing there kind of like this, like holding each other and shoving, waiting for this guy to come over the ropes. Like, it'd be so much better if they just all took like took a knee. Take a knee like you're having trouble getting up, and then at the same time you all come up, you catch the guy. But consequently, if you mess that up, and I showed you the clip of Montez Ford because you hadn't seen that, but if you mess up that catch, like, it's dangerous. So I understand why they do that.
And vice versa with recently Ray Phoenix as well. That happened where he, you know, it was, because this is the thing why this particular spot is a bit back and forth, because it's all about the timing, and the positioning, and obviously the guy being able to fly that far. Because obviously in the case of Rey Fenix, it could either be the situation he didn't bounce far enough to get to the guys, or they were not in the right position to catch him. Because what happened was he bounced, he did like a rolling senton essentially onto these guys from the top rope, and they only caught his legs, so his shoulders and neck slammed straight into the ground.
Ugh. Yeah, that's
it was painful
landing
to watch. Yeah. And I'd say in that case, it was the guys being out of position, because obviously if you've ever watched the Rey Fenix match, that he can't do anything wrong.
I don't. Okay, so I've heard people say that about Rey Fenix before, but I've also seen Rey Fenix botch spots. I've seen him botch spots. I've watched it when people are like...
How often, though?
It doesn't have to be often. When all of the spots you're doing are high spots, it only takes one botch. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem, is when you're only doing high spots, it only takes one botch. And if I recall correctly, the spot I saw him do that he fucked up was he was trying to walk the ropes and he slipped. And I mean, that's understandable. It happens, right? Like, that's not an easy thing to do, and I get it. And I'm not shooting on the guy for doing it. I'm just saying, like, everybody has this impression that he's perfect. Nobody's that perfect, especially with high spots. It's a danger. But I mean, that's why I'm like, as much as that one bothers me, you can't really do anything about that doesn't risk people's safety even more. So I don't think you necessarily change that one. Like, even though it's frustrating from a believability standpoint, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? It's better to be safe, in my opinion. So we're nearing about the time that we generally aim to go with these. So let's end on a positive note, and let's talk about one of the funnest comedy spots in... Funnest isn't a word, I don't think, but I don't care because my girlfriend's not here to correct me. Let's talk about one of the most fun comedy spots in wrestling history. Goth, do you want to walk us down the road of the PWG Jushin Thunder Liger spot?
Yes! Okay, so if nobody's ever seen this, in a PWG event, there was a 5-on-5 tag match where I don't know what the gimmick was at the time, but Tommaso Ciampa was doing this thumb thing. And basically, Jushin Thunder Liger, because he's such a hero, because he's such a legend, was like, he's going to take the bullet. So he gets into the ring and he walks over to the corner and basically presents himself. And literally, the line, it's burned into my memory for the rest of my life. He literally just shouts, "Now, stick it in my asshole!" So Tommaso Ciampa literally does. Then the next guy gets in, sticks a thumb up his ass, and so on and so forth, till you have this train of people with thumbs in their asses, ending with Jushin Thunder Liger suplexing them with his ass. He has a super powered asshole.
I just put the spot into the chat if people want to look at it. This is absolutely hilarious, and it's made more hilarious by the background information about this. Like, I know when Jushin Thunder Liger went there, he was telling them, "I want to do this spot," and they were like, "No, you're like a legend, you're a serious wrestler, you don't want to do this spot." And he was like, "No, I want to do the spot." And what's so even better is, like, I pulled the clip up now so that I could go through this, but at least 80% of the people involved in this spot are currently working for WWE now, and one of them is working in other places. So right here on screen, we have Tommaso Ciampa, we have Aleister Black, we have Sami Callihan, we have Cedric Alexander, we have Matt Bro Riddle, we've got Pete Dunne, and then Chuck Taylor, and I think that's Haskins. Pretty sure that's Haskins right there.
And also Jushin Thunder Liger.
Yeah, it's just like a laundry list of some of the people that are, big in wrestling right now. It's just hilarious.
It's just one of the funniest spots I've ever seen, because it's just the point as well. Like, it ends with apparently Jushin Thunder Liger is so like fucking awesome. He has a superpowered asshole that can suplex people.
It's one of those comedy spots that like, so I do actually like, I listen to Jim Cornette on a lot of stuff. I think that he is brilliant when it comes to ring psychology and that he has a wealth of knowledge. I don't agree with him on a lot of topics because
same.
He's a little bit
jaded.
He's a little bit dated. Let's call him dated in his perceptions. But I do think that he is an encyclopedia of wrestling, and he's brilliant when it comes to psychology and match construction and stuff like that. And he would absolutely hate this spot, but in this instance, I'm going to disagree with him because I think that this spot was Jushin Thunder Liger having fun with an audience that wanted to have fun with him. And it's just a great spot, man. I think it was just a great spot, and it was enjoyable, and I think the crowd was into it. And, like, I get it. It makes the business not look serious enough, but we live in a world where, like, you can't protect it like that anymore. It's just not possible.
No.
Because not everyone agrees, you know?
And, I mean, let's be honest, if you want to just go a bit technically psychology, Jushin Thunder Liger is based off a mecha anime. If there was somebody that did have a superpowered asshole that could suplex people, it would probably be him.
I think you're just getting a good time out of using the A word over and over again, honestly. I think that right now you're just like, I can get away with this. I'm going for it. I am all in.
Hey, I haven't dropped an F-bomb yet, so...
I mean, is that necessarily better, though? Like, I'm literally going, is it better that you're just dropping the A-bomb over and over again?
Hey, look... just had too much fun.
So I mean that's really all I had in mind to discuss on spots. It's one of those topics that's really difficult to talk about because it's difficult to define. But the reality is that spot construction is one of the most interesting aspects of match construction, and it's really cool because if you understand the way that the industry works, spot construction is not something that gets handled backstage. Vince McMahon does not sit down with people and construct spots. That's not how that works. No. Spot construction is one of the few things you get to see where you get to see the wrestlers come up with it themselves. And that's kind of cool because that's where you really see the creativity of the wrestlers come through in the matches. So take a moment, folks, when you're watching wrestling and just really take that time to appreciate the spots that some of these guys come up with because they can just be frankly brilliant. Oh my gosh, I was trying to... So, I said guys, but I mean competitors in general because I saw this spot with Britt Baker recently where she was just... It was a brilliant heel spot. Just like absolutely brilliant. I don't know if how much of AEW you've been watching lately, Goth, but...
I not for the lack of trying, but it's also like I try to... You know, I can't catch it live, and sometimes because of that, I forget to watch it.
Yeah, so
don't get me wrong, I'm AEW through and through, but anyway, continue.
So right before Double or Nothing, you know, they're trying to push Britt Baker as a heel, and I like her a lot better as a heel than as a face, I'll be honest. As a face, she felt pretty bland and generic. But right before Double or Nothing, they were trying to build up a feud with her and Chris Statlander. So because of the pandemic, she's got these silicone like rubber gloves on, right? And she applies the mandible claw and she's like screaming at Statlander and just like wrenching it around and stuff. And when she gets done, and this is what I mean by like, these are the things that the wrestlers come up with themselves that are just brilliant. She literally like slaps her with the silicone glove afterwards while she's like yelling at her and just being a heel. And then she takes the silicone glove off, like shoves it in her mouth and then kicks her in the face. And I was like, dude, that was a good spot. You just got yourself over as a heel real good right there. So kudos to Britt Baker. If you happen to watch this, which I highly, highly doubt, but if you do watch this, listen to this, Britt Baker, your new direction is solid. Good job. Good job. I believe in you. You can do this. You can be a role model. Anyways, folks, that's all I think we've got for you this week. Goth, you have anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Nah, I'm fresh out of ideas.
All right, everybody. Until next time, this has been Good and
Goth.
And this was Hitting the Mats. Peace.